Welcome to History Explained, where we illuminate the past to better understand our present. I'm your guide to your daily journey through the past to empower the future. Today is Friday, July 11, 2025. As we do every Friday, we're exploring a significant economic milestone that shaped the development of our modern financial system. Today, we turn our attention to the Great Depression, the most severe economic downturn in modern history that lasted from 1929 to the late 1930s. This catastrophic economic collapse fundamentally transformed government's role in the economy and established new approaches to economic policy that continue to influence how nations respond to financial crises today. What makes the Great Depression particularly significant is how it demonstrated the vulnerability of modern capitalist economies to systemic collapse while spurring innovations in economic theory and government intervention that would reshape the relationship between markets and states for generations. So let's explore this pivotal economic catastrophe, examining the causes that led to the collapse, the devastating human impact across the globe, the policy responses that emerged, and the lasting changes it brought to economic thinking and government practice. The roots of the Great Depression lay in the structural weaknesses and imbalances that developed during the prosperous 1920s. While the decade appeared to be one of unprecedented growth and prosperity, particularly in the United States, underlying problems were building that would eventually trigger economic collapse. The agricultural sector had never fully recovered from World War I, with farmers facing chronic overproduction and falling prices throughout the 1920s. Rural banks, heavily invested in agricultural loans, were already failing at alarming rates before the stock market crash, indicating serious problems in the economy's foundation. Income inequality had reached extreme levels by 1929, with the wealthiest 1% of Americans receiving about 24% of total income. This concentration of wealth reduced consumer spending power among the majority of the population, creating unsustainable economic dynamics. Consumer debt had expanded dramatically during the 1920s as installment buying became popular for automobiles, appliances, and other durable goods. Many families were heavily leveraged, making them vulnerable to any disruption in employment or income. International economic relationships were also unstable. War debts from World War I created tensions between the United States and European allies, while protectionist trade policies were already reducing international commerce before the Depression began. The immediate trigger came with the stock market crash beginning on October 24, 1929, Black Thursday, followed by the even more devastating Black Tuesday on October 29. However, the crash was more a symptom than a cause of deeper economic problems that had been developing for years. Banking systems proved particularly vulnerable as panicked depositors rushed to withdraw their savings. Without deposit insurance, bank failures destroyed people's life savings and contracted the money supply, worsening the economic downturn through a deflationary spiral. The Federal Reserve's response proved inadequate and often counterproductive. Rather than acting as a lender of last resort to prevent bank failures, the Fed allowed the money supply to contract by one-third between 1929 and 1933, turning a recession into a depression. President Herbert Hoover initially maintained confidence that the downturn would be brief and that natural market forces would restore prosperity. His administration's limited intervention efforts proved insufficient to address the crisis's magnitude and duration. Unemployment reached catastrophic levels, rising from 3.2% in 1929 to 24.9% in 1933. At the Depression's peak, approximately 15 million Americans were unemployed, while many others worked reduced hours or accepted severe pay cuts to keep their jobs. The human suffering was immense and visible. Breadlines formed in major cities as private charities struggled to feed the hungry. Hoovervilles, shantytowns named sarcastically after the president, sprang up as families lost their homes and had nowhere else to go. Agricultural regions faced particular hardship as crop prices collapsed and drought conditions in the Dust Bowl made farming impossible across large areas of the Great Plains. Hundreds of thousands of Okies and other migrants left their homes seeking work elsewhere. The international dimension of the crisis became apparent as the Depression spread globally. European economies, still fragile from World War I, were devastated by the withdrawal of American investment and loans. Germany's economy collapsed, contributing to political instability that would help bring the Nazis to power. Britain abandoned the gold standard in 1931, followed by many other countries, as international monetary cooperation broke down. Trade wars erupted as nations raised tariffs to protect domestic industries, further reducing global commerce and worsening the worldwide depression. The political consequences were severe in many countries. Democratic governments fell as voters lost confidence in traditional parties and leaders. Extremist movements gained support by promising radical solutions to economic hardship, threatening democratic institutions worldwide. The turning point in the United States came with Franklin D. Roosevelt's election in 1932 and his inauguration in March 1933. Roosevelt's New Deal represented a fundamental shift in government's approach to economic management and social welfare. The immediate banking crisis was addressed through the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which closed all banks temporarily and reopened only those deemed sound. The creation of federal deposit insurance through the FDIC restored confidence in the banking system and prevented future bank runs. Employment programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps and Works Progress Administration put millions of Americans back to work on public projects including roads, bridges, parks, and public buildings. These programs provided immediate relief while creating infrastructure that benefited the entire economy. Agricultural policy was revolutionized through programs that paid farmers to reduce production, thereby raising crop prices and farm incomes. While controversial, these interventions helped stabilize rural areas and demonstrated government's new willingness to intervene directly in markets. Social Security, established in 1935, created a safety net for elderly Americans while establishing the principle that government had responsibility for citizens' economic security. This program fundamentally changed the relationship between individuals and the state. Labor relations were transformed through laws protecting workers' rights to organize and bargain collectively. The Wagner Act strengthened labor unions and established new mechanisms for resolving labor disputes, shifting power relationships in the workplace. Financial regulation was extensively reformed through laws separating commercial and investment banking, regulating securities markets, and creating oversight mechanisms to prevent the speculation and fraud that had contributed to the crash. However, the New Deal's effectiveness remains debated. While it provided crucial relief and reformed many aspects of the economy, unemployment remained high throughout the 1930s, only declining to pre-Depression levels during World War II when massive government spending finally restored full employment. The war's economic impact demonstrated that government spending could indeed stimulate economic recovery, validating Keynesian economic theories that had been controversial during the 1930s. This experience established deficit spending as an accepted tool for fighting recessions. The Great Depression fundamentally changed economic thinking. Classical economics, which assumed that markets would naturally return to full employment equilibrium, was discredited by the Depression's persistence. John Maynard Keynes's theories about the need for government intervention gained widespread acceptance. The concept of automatic stabilizers, programs like unemployment insurance that increase government spending during recessions, became standard features of economic policy. These mechanisms help cushion economic downturns and prevent them from becoming as severe as the Great Depression. Central banking practices were revolutionized based on lessons learned from the Federal Reserve's failures during the 1930s. Modern central banks accept responsibility for maintaining financial stability and are prepared to act aggressively to prevent deflationary spirals. International economic cooperation was recognized as essential for preventing future depressions. The Bretton Woods system established after World War II created new institutions and mechanisms for coordinating economic policies among nations. The welfare state concept gained acceptance as governments took on greater responsibilities for citizens' economic security. Programs providing unemployment insurance, old age pensions, and healthcare became standard features of developed economies. Business regulation increased significantly as governments sought to prevent the speculation and corporate abuses that had contributed to the crash. Securities regulation, banking oversight, and antitrust enforcement all expanded substantially. The Great Depression's legacy continues to influence economic policy today. During the 2008 financial crisis, policymakers explicitly drew lessons from the 1930s, implementing aggressive monetary and fiscal policies to prevent a repeat of the Depression's devastating deflation. However, debates continue about the proper role of government in the economy. While few advocate a return to pre-Depression laissez-faire policies, disagreements persist about how much regulation and intervention is appropriate in different circumstances. The Depression's global nature also highlighted the interconnectedness of modern economies and the need for international cooperation in addressing economic crises. These lessons remain relevant as we face contemporary challenges like climate change and technological disruption. The social and political consequences of the Great Depression remind us that economic policy is never merely technical but has profound human implications. The suffering experienced during the 1930s motivated the creation of safety nets and stabilization mechanisms that protect vulnerable populations during economic downturns. The Great Depression stands as a watershed moment in economic history, transforming how governments and societies approach economic management and social welfare. Its lessons about the need for financial regulation, social safety nets, and active government intervention during crises continue to influence policy responses to economic challenges. While we have developed better tools for preventing and managing economic downturns, the Depression's legacy reminds us that economic systems are fragile and require careful oversight and intervention to serve human needs effectively. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of the Great Depression. Tomorrow, we'll be back with our military history episode examining D-Day and the Allied invasion of Normandy that opened the Second Front in World War II. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell. What lessons from the Great Depression do you think are most relevant for understanding contemporary economic challenges? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, I'm your guide for History Explained, where we believe that understanding yesterday is the key to navigating tomorrow.